Welcome to the Whisper Sessions, and this week is episode 2. In this week's episode, we're going to be uncovering chapter 2 of Whispers Among the Blossoms. Have you ever held on to something so tightly, but no matter how tight you grasped it, you just felt like you were losing control? Well, that's JB in chapter 2 of this week's episode. If you recall, in chapter 1, JB found a body of a teenage girl lying face down in the dirt in a vacant lot. And that discovery brought a call to his confidential informant. And he told his confidential informant at the end of chapter 1 that he expected results in identifying who was behind the killing, the brutal killing of that teenage girl in that vacant lot. That brings us to chapter 2. And in chapter 2, at about 3 o'clock in the morning, at the close of being on scene and having that meeting with that confidential informant, JB returns home to a dark house. His wife, Hannah, who'd been married with for over 14 years, was asleep on the couch when he arrived. To set the scene, he kind of sneaks into the house and goes through the counter and picks up some mail, starts sifting through the mail. He starts thinking about the young girl's body in that vacant lot. He looks over at his wife, sees her sleeping peacefully. And that's where we're going to pick up a short reading in chapter 2. Modesto was supposed to be the place where they could finally do that. Leaving the Marines and starting fresh with the FBI felt like the chance to wipe the slate clean and begin again. They had been so young when they were married, so full of plans and dreams, as if love alone would be enough to carry them through whatever came next. But now, after 14 years, those dreams had become blurred, weighed down by too much distance and too many secrets. Hannah still hoped they could build the life they had once envisioned, but she couldn't shake the feeling that JB was always one step away from disappearing again. The FBI had brought new challenges, different work, but the same silences, the same walls. She hoped the move to Modesto would allow them to finally grow closer, but more often than not, it felt like they were still worlds apart, separated by everything left unsaid. JB made his way to the kitchen and found a pot of coffee on the stove. In the adjoining room, Hannah lay asleep on the couch. He poured a cup of coffee and leaned against the refrigerator door, feeling the weight of his own emotional distance. He knew she deserved more than a part-time husband, who, even when present, was emotionally vacant. In his heart, he knew he had traded one set of professional secrets for another, and he regretted that she had to be secondary priority in his life. After a few minutes, he exhaled deeply and set the coffee on the counter. He noticed a stack of envelopes near the cup, routine bills, unwanted realtor cards. The last piece of mail caught his attention, a medical envelope from the Northern California fertility specialist. It was a fertility clinic located 2.5 hours away in the San Francisco Bay Area. He looked around the dark room, glanced at Hannah, and then opened the envelope. Inside was a pamphlet and a letter from her physician, Dr. Laura Kelly. Her physician, he thought. When did she visit a fertility clinic? Why hadn't he known? The questions gnawed at him. Did he know she had an appointment and just not pay attention? His focus had been solely on his cases. He read the opening paragraph, a generic note of gratitude from the physician, and then moved to the second paragraph, which detailed ovarian cancer concerns and fertility issues. It mentioned elevated CA-125 markers and the possibility of a tumor, requiring further lab work and a biopsy. Tumor, lab results, biopsy. His mouth went dry. The acid in his stomach surged. The thought of not being able to have children hadn't been on his radar, not with the timing of deployments and the adoption of his 5-year-old nephew, Jared. JB slid the letter back into its envelope, hiding it beneath the stack of bills on the counter. His hands felt heavy as he reached for the bottle of Basil Hayden he'd kept hidden above the refrigerator, a place Hannah never looked. Basil Hayden was his bourbon of choice, smooth, familiar, comforting in a way nothing else was anymore. But on nights like this, it hardly mattered what he drank. He would have taken anything to dull the edges of his thoughts. He poured a shot, downed it quickly, and then poured another. By the third, he stopped pushing, pouring himself a fuller glass, letting a liquid settle in his hand. He felt the burn slide down his throat, but the warmth didn't quite reach the cold knot tightening in his chest. With a sigh, he carried the glass into the family room, where Hannah lay curled up on the sofa, her breathing soft and even, lost in sleep. JB sank into the recliner, bourbon in hand, and stared at her. She looked peaceful like this, so unlike the rest of the time, when the space between them felt like miles of unspoken words and unshed tears. He loved her. He knew that much. But why did it feel so distant, like an old photograph fading at the edges? What had happened to the connection they'd once had, the easy conversations, the shared laughter? Now it was as if he had been standing on one side of a chasm and she on the other for years. How had he let it get this far? He took another sip of his bourbon, his mind drifting back to the hundreds of conversations they'd had over the years. Distracted, disconnected, always one foot out the door. He had spent so many years surviving, pushing down every feeling that might slow him down. And now he couldn't seem to turn it off. It wasn't just the military that had done this to him. It was everything after. The FBI, the cases, the secrets. How could he explain what it felt like to carry all that weight, all those lives on his shoulders? How could he tell her what it was like to wake up every day and wonder if this was the day he wouldn't make it home? JB looked at Hannah again, still asleep, her face soft in the dim light of the room. He wanted to reach out, to touch her, to tell her everything, but the words sat heavy on his tongue, refusing to come. Instead, he took another drink, sinking further into the chair, lost in the swirling fog of his thoughts. Maybe tomorrow he would try, or maybe tomorrow would be like today, another day where the distance grew and the silence between them stretched on. So that's a bit of the scene of chapter 2, kind of giving a little backstory to the history of JB and Hannah and their marriage, their struggle with infertility, her recent ovarian cancer diagnosis, or at least the scare of an ovarian cancer diagnosis. And that sets the stage truly for what is the beginning of the novel for JB, the struggles that he faces in his work life, his personal life, the stresses and the pressures. As we look ahead to chapter 3, we get introduced to Lily Grace. Lily Grace is the 15-year-old girl who will ultimately be abducted into a child sex trafficking ring. But taking a step back to chapter 2, infertility is a major theme of this novel, Whispers Among the Blossoms, but it's also a theme for our family and for our life, as that was something that my wife and I had to embark on over 15 years ago, 20 years ago now. So my heart goes out to all those families, those husbands and wives who struggle with infertility, struggle with wondering if they'll be blessed with children. And my heart truly goes out to those who are never blessed with the ability to have children. I hope you'll read Whispers Among the Blossoms and have a heart as you read it for those who are struggling with infertility. Thank you, and look forward to Whisper Sessions Chapter 3 coming next week.